So, thank you everybody for joining us here in Hamburg today. I'm Andy Murray, Director Navigation Solutions at Raymarine Commercial. Today I'm going to share with you how our S-100 development is going, feedback on some of the sea trials that we've talked about earlier, against the advice of my technical team, have a live demo, and where we see the S-100 regulatory timelines. So ECDIS is central to modern navigation. From January 2029, as you've heard all day, newly fitted ECDIS will need to comply with the S-100 framework. But this isn't just a regulatory hurdle. We see this as an opportunity to think how ECDIS can become more intuitive, more integrated, and more reliable. At Raymarine Commercial, we're stepping forward to deliver a system that not only meets the IMO deadlines, but builds confidence in us as a trusted navigation partner. So what are we building? Our next generation ECDIS is fully built around the S-100 concept. But just as importantly, it's built around the Raymarine DNA, seamlessly integrating with ship systems and being cyber secure. Designed with an eye on the future, where upgradability and connectivity are baked in from the ground up, not shoehorned into legacy code. In short, we've designed this not just for compliance, but for confidence on the bridge. With connectivity built in at the system's heart, this opens the door for automated updates, remote diagnostics, remote monitoring, post-voyage analytics, and also remote due diligence. When designing Pathfinder, we started with 3 guiding principles. Firstly, officers should not spend hours figuring out a user interface. I still remember at the early stages of my career, a second officer who is a close personal friend launched at me when I went on a ship about how systems are designed by programmers sitting at desks who have never even seen the sea. At Raymarine, we're always asking ourselves, how can we make the mariner's life easier? Secondly, reliability. Too many systems reboot, throw exceptions, show blue screens, or require regular service interventions to keep operating at their best. Pathfinder leaves legacy desktop operating systems behind, and our hardware is designed in Ferrum to operate in the harshest conditions that we can throw at it. Thirdly, scalability. As you've heard all day, these standards are going to evolve over a number of years. As performance standards evolve and new S-100 products are introduced, we need to make sure that we can evolve the systems without requiring major retrofits of hardware. Over the last year, we've been developing and validating our ECDIS to the current performance standard and going through approvals with our notified body. But alongside that, we've also been internally validating our compliance to S-100. And as these standards have been evolving, that has been a moving goalpost. But we've also been evaluating what's required to comply in 2029. We've launched sea trials internally on our own vessels and with partners such as the UKHO. As you've heard already today, Matt gets quite seasick. I have saved bringing out the photographs, but at least in this presentation anyway. We've gained some really valuable feedback on S-100 generally and within our ECDIS. Crews report they're able to get familiar with the user interface easily, and they're also keen to see how these trials evolve and how S-100 data layers can make their life easier as we gain more knowledge through these trials. But most importantly, we're successfully testing real-world interactions with multi-layer, multi-producer S-100 datasets. We're not just operating in small, localized trials. From early 2026, we will launch Pathfinder ENS. This is a compact system that can be run standalone on its internal GPS or connected into the ship's sensors. It's designed for hydrographic offices, training centers, and shipping companies wishing to see and trial S-100 data in their own operational areas. Ultimately, there are so many different use cases of S-100. Using it in your own environment is how you are going to gain most knowledge of these upcoming changes. Pathfinder ENS supports dual fuel operation, exactly as it will do from 2029. And as these S-100 standards evolve, Pathfinder ENS will evolve over the next few years. So we will now try and do a live demo. What could possibly go wrong? So what you see here in front of you is an S-101 cell of the River Elbe. The vessel's safety settings are set to just over 10 meters, so 10.5 meters on the safety depth. And you can see the contour is rounding up to the next deepest contour, making a large portion of the river not safe to be navigated. So if we enable the S-102 layer, what this can now show you is there is a lot more of the river actually able to be navigated. And this is one of the real benefits that we've talked about, but actually seeing it in action, I think, brings it to life. Screenshots don't do this justice, just how much that extra data brings to the mariner. But one of the biggest things we found during these trials is it is garbage in, garbage out. If you have poor quality S-102 data, it does not bring the benefits that you would expect. If we go around to the cruise terminal here, you can see at the end of this quayside, there is this small jut out that you see on the S-57 cell. When I enable S-102, you can immediately see that this is no longer such a navigational hazard as you might initially think. This just means that you have more time to think about things as you're going through a tricky maneuver. You know, if there's port traffic, you just don't have to suddenly think about where is the actual seabed. So this is a real life benefit, and I'm sure as we get more data into these systems, we will find more and more use cases like this. If we move down the River Elbe, we can find the boundary between the old and the new. And the initial feedback we've had on this is it's quite jarring, because you've got the traditional dredged areas being shown, and then you've got the new world where all of this is deliberately suppressed at the request of the IHO standards. And I think this is where early crew training is going to be required, because if every person we've put this in front of who is on board a ship has asked these questions about where have my spot soundings gone, where have the dredged areas gone. And I think that comes back to the training piece of it deserves more than a 5-minute section in a manufacturer's type specific course. This deserves to be taught well so that the crews fully understand the changes to the performance standards. If we move down the Elbe further, we can enable some of the S-111 surface currents. And this is, again, a really valuable sort of change to the ECDIS that we can see. All of these arrows are vastly more, produce vastly more information than the old S-57 implementation of tides and currents, where it might have been one tide diamond halfway up the river. The downside of this is you can see where the mariner hasn't really been consulted on some of these performance standards, and certainly the visualization of this data, because it is starting to get quite cluttered on the screen. Secondly, it's not really giving me what I want. What is that in terms of direction and current? And these are problems that have been solved 20 years ago. I've seen ECDIS systems of the past where they have had really nice tidal current displays, but we're now bound by what the IHO say. And I really think we as industry and shipping companies need to feed back exactly what we're trying to get out of these situations. I want to be able to see, is the tide going to change in the next 30 minutes? Is the direction going to change significantly? And all of these problems, you can see where the S-100 standards have been designed in little silos, not necessarily thinking about how they all link together. And data overload, you can see how easily it is to get the system so that data will start to look very, very cluttered. But there is really good potential here, and we've certainly got to work over the next couple of years to understand how we can improve this and make the mariner's life a lot easier than it is today. Finally, if we go back up the river to where we find the S-102 data, I sort of want to highlight a couple of snags we've unexpectedly found during our trials. So the first one, if I go back up into the port, you can see when I've got the S-102 data enabled, the land is being suppressed, or the edge of the quayside is being hidden by the 102 boundary information. If I turn off the data grid, This is a very German-looking quayside, very nice and square. If I turn the S-100 back on, it's not so German when this is now rendered. So these are things that we need to feed back into the working groups to ensure that those problems are resolved. And then if I turn on the relief shading view, what this produces is a very nice, fancy-looking picture of the seabed, and this works really well. It shows you some great underwater features. However, when I operate in sort of dusk palette, what you will see is it's unusable. So the night palettes have not been thought about. They've only ever used this in day. So these are things that we found on the initial sea trials, and we fed back into the working groups already. There will be some systems outside that the technical team will be able to run you through. Please take some time to run through those with those guys. How do we see the roadmap to 2029? So I see the remainder of this year is what I would class as alpha trials. Every piece of data we've received has had to be manipulated in some manner. We are making big steps forwards, but we need to get working with the producers to ensure that there is compliant data coming out. Over the next couple of years, it's really going to be an expansion of beta feedback, understanding what shipping companies' use cases are, what works, what doesn't work. And I think we will learn a lot over the next 2 years. And then ultimately, through 2028, we expect to be able to certify our dual fuel ECDIS. And actually, what's really interesting today is we've all mentioned this date of 2028. We didn't actually collude at the beginning of this day to work out what the dates were going to be. So multiple people have independently come up with, we think 2028 is when certification can happen. So finally, to close, Raymarine Commercial is ready to deliver the next generation of S-100 ECDIS. We're not just chasing compliance, but we're building a system that crews trust, regulators approve, and owners and operators truly valuable by reducing the workload wherever it is possible. We're committed to working with IMO, IHO, and IEC to make sure that the technical risks are resolved well before the 2029 deadlines. Really, I invite anybody to join us on this journey and feed back into the S-100 world so together we can make this a success, not just for the hydrographic offices and the data producers, but ultimately the mariner who is using this system day in, day out. And a final thank you to all of the companies that have provided data that have allowed these trials to and demonstration today to happen. And that is me. Over to Andre.